Commissions to order at 8 a.m. Right on time. Happy everyone made it in safe, and hope folks are safe out there watching. Please give yourself extra time and stay home if you can. In my newscaster weather voice, a lot of people, and check the tires. Oh my goodness, bald tires are dangerous. Okay. So we've only got a few things on our agenda today. We'll move to our first item, which is a resolution confirming Mayor LeGrand's appointment of Terry Baker to the Mobile GR Commission.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Comments on this appointment, colleagues? Rather important commission that has a lot of important conversation going on, such as doubling parking fees currently. That was an interesting conversation I saw in the news recently, so I will be paying attention to that commission even more. So I'm hopeful that this person is also paying attention. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to our second resolution confirming Mayor LeGrand's appointment of Andrew Roher to the Mobile GR Commission.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Comments, colleagues? Yes, Commissioner.
Remind me, is this one a reappointment or this is a new appointment?
This is a new appointment.
And this is a mayoral appointment as well?
Correct.
Right? Yep, okay. It's right there, sorry.
All right. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, if Ms. Bosker, if you could guide us through our vacancy on our board and commissions.
Yes, we have quite a few vacancies, but we are making lots of progress, and pending just moving along with vetting, February should clean a lot of this up. We have North Quarter CIA and West Side CIA appointments planned. Those are mayoral appointments. A Historic Preservation Commission appointment. Another Mobile GR and Vital Streets mayoral appointments are planned. And then also I'm working on the large batch reappointment of the Economic Development Department members to get them in line with that summer 6-month later term end date.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Ms. Bosker. And what board did I just make a recent appointment to? The
Oh, yes.
Civilian Appeals Board, right?
Yep, Civilian Appeal Board, that should be in February for sure.
Okay.
Your appointment, and then there's a couple others that are in deliberation, and so we'll make progress towards getting everybody back in line on that body as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's a rather important board. I believe each member of the commission has an appointment. I know Commissioner Belcheck, thank you for submitting your appointment as well. So I'm happy that that body, all of our boards and commissions are important, but that body will have some renewed energy in sense of urgency on their task ahead. So I'm really excited about that. All right, any further comments, you all? Yes, Commissioner.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Chair, that was the first board I sat on in 2006, all those years back. It's hard to believe I was old enough at that time, but no, that was...
What, 8th grade or something?
Yeah, I know, it's right, fresh, but it was a really good, experience, and so just want to highlight that. And I think, please let me know if we need to follow up with any of our colleagues on any of the appointments. I'm happy to help with that as well. I did also... And I know Ms. Bosker, again, been keeping us on task. There's the one that is a city commission appointment for the Parks and Recreation Committee. I shared some thoughts with you in terms of just, hopefully looking at a good balance of engagement.
Yeah. Yeah, these are all really important. And yes, thank you for the reminder, Commissioner. Our colleagues, certainly we should reach out to our colleagues in our respective wards to let them know that they have an appointment as well on at least the Civilian Appeals Board, just to get the thoughts running for these new appointments. All right. Any further comments? Yes, Commissioner. Oh, yes.
Could we review the resignations as well?
There are not any resignations.
No
for tonight.
resignations, okay. But you said so far there'll be in this month and next month, 3 new appointments to Mobile GR?
Correct. At least 3, probably a 4th
Okay.
as well next month.
Is that terms? Is that just other personal reasons for?
That was as a result of at the end of last year, people
Okay.
were term limited.
Okay, just wondering since it seemed like a high number. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
So I will just say that I continue to be recruiting, I guess, folks out in the community. I've had the chance to speak with some people in the J. Van Swan neighborhood, the West Grand neighborhood, a little bit in the Roosevelt Park neighborhood, but I do continue to look for diversity as well as some Spanish language, I think, in representing some different parts of the community. But there's a lot of people who are interested, but I always remind them that we can't really consider them until they put in their application. So keep pointing people to the website on that.
Yes, follow through is very important. There's nothing we can do until we get you here. Thank you, Commissioner Belchak. All right. Well, that concludes our meeting for today. Stay safe, stay warm, and we will adjourn the committee on appointments at 8:05 a.m.
That's crazy. That was 20. Ahead and call this fiscal committee meeting to order. I am sitting in today for Commissioner Robbins. He will be here shortly. The weather's presenting a few challenges for individuals, and Commissioner Knight is out and will excuse her absence later. So, but I used to be on this committee, so nice to see you all today. Our first item is a resolution accepting a grant from the Grand Rapids Community Foundation in the amount of $10,000 to support MLBEs in obtaining net worth statements.
So moved.
And I'll support that. Mr. Hills?
Good morning, Commissioners, city colleagues. This grant allows us to continue decreasing the barrier of CPA access. Part of the eligibility process to become an MLB is you need a certified net worth statement from a CPA. So this grant will help about 13 companies become microlocals with the city of Grand Rapids.
Questions?
A comment, very happy to see this before us and thankful for the Community Foundation's investment in our community. I used to be on the Black Legacy Fund committee for the Community Foundation and really have seen firsthand their investment in our frontline communities here. So very thankful for this and very supportive of it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hills, I have a question. What's the total investment for that CPA, for that support to obtain it?
It's typically about $750 interaction with the company. So it does fluctuate depending on the company's revenue and sophistication of the majority owner's assets. So it could fluctuate between $500 to $750.
And you said about 13?
Yeah, if all of them were at about the 750 mark, it'd be 13 companies.
Wonderful. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a resolution approving an increase of $85,000 to the professional services agreement with Plant Moran for auditing services for fiscal year 2025 for a total amount not to exceed $293,490.
So moved.
Support. Ms. Claren?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is simply to increase our contractual authority for that audit contract. We talked to this body about the complexities and challenges we had with going live with our new Oracle system. On top of that, the challenges with the implementer. So that made an issue for reporting, getting certain tasks done on time. So we had to be flexible with our auditing staff at Plant Moran to, come and go until we had stuff available. As a result, we incurred more costs. When I talked with Plant Moran, the range of increased costs was between $65,000 and $85,000. So we're just raising that allowable ceiling up to additional $85,000 for this contract.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner?
No.
Then, Ms. Claren, to confirm for the next fiscal year, we don't expect that additional?
No, I don't think it would be this high. We are gonna go into negotiations soon, possibly doing a 2-year extension, just because we are still in that transition period with the new system. They understand us, so I'm not quite ready to go out to do an RFP. Maybe after this extension we would, but yeah, that to be, we're talking now. So,
Okay.
on that, so I should have an item within the next month or two.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 3 is a resolution authorizing payment to the Grand Rapids Community Foundation in the amount of $173,897.11 to the City of Grand Rapids Affordable Housing Fund.
So moved.
Support, Ms. Claren?
This one is just exactly as you stated. The city houses an affordable housing fund that is external to the city, so we make contributions for it, and it's housed at the Community Foundation. I did check the total balance, and it's up around $1.7 million now. So our Affordable Housing Board is probably eager to put a lot of that to work. So I think with this budget, fiscal year 27 budget, we'll be having a lot more of those conversations.
Okay.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
And then, do you know the last time they met? I don't see Ms. Behrens, but,
I can follow up and let you know.
yeah, thank you. I mean, I could also probably look on our nifty site we have here and the investment we made. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries. Next item is a ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2025-11 for fiscal year 2026, Amendment Number 5.
So usually we don't have this many amendments. Oh, sorry. I'm jumping in.
So moved.
Support.
I'm jumping out of the gate because, as I was going to say, there is quite a few, but
No problem.
you guys have been through this before where we do freeze budget amendments while we're working on the on the next budget. So that's one of the reasons everything got sandwiched into this meeting. So I'll be brief, but we do
No
have
problem.
so we do have a couple grant awards, drug sobriety court. Two items out of the 61st District Court, another grant out of the Clerk's Department, the Americans with Disabilities Grant Act Grant Award, as well as a special election reimbursement for Parks and Rec. We have the Sullivan Field improvements, and then police, we have in-service training through the Michaels funding, engineering, appropriating some of that additional state funding to Vital Streets, as well as reconstruction of Fuller Avenue from Kalamazoo to Boston. We also have appropriation for a bond issue we plan to do this spring related to the 1500 Scribner to make up that final gap financing. Engineering department's also appropriating money to the museum, neighborhood of $4 million related to work on an elevator. Parks and Rec, they have the master plan update. And then the next few are personnel additions. We did be mindful about what we were adding for personnel additions, ensuring that we had sufficient revenue through fees of those individual funds or cost of service to help cover. So we have a permanent roster add of an economic development coordinator, as well as an economic development coordinator 2 out of the planning department, strategic marketing communications specialist, as well as with the police department. While this is general fund, we did get through the state an additional 1.7 of revenue sharing money that's anticipated. I did talk to the Department of Treasury of when we expect that revenue. Supposed to get a check by April or May for that. So we went ahead and added these 10 positions, 8 officers, 2 sergeants, to again continue to support that community policing model. Out of the executive office, we have money towards the enhanced support pilot program, as well as arts and culture strategy initiative of $75,000. Then back to Parks and Rec, we have improvements at the Ice House at Belknap Park, as well as the item we just talked about, the Affordable Housing Fund transfer. And then number 20, we have the Housing Next contract, just for additional work they've had to do related to the ADU task force mainly. So that is in total what we're all adding.
Thank you for reviewing that. No problem to review it all. We're here for that, these matters, so thank you. Commissioner, any questions for Ms. Clarence?
Yeah, a few.
Sure.
First, the 1.7 million for the Public Safety Trust Fund from the state. You said
Yes.
that we can expect that around spring, April, May.
Yeah, I talked to them earlier or last week, and that's the anticipate when the Department of Treasury is actually going to execute and get the payments out to municipalities. So we've been waiting since they adopted the state
Yeah.
budget. Yeah.
And that wasn't cut from their 645 million. So with those positions that we added, how much of that 1.7 are we using?
That's going to take up about 3/4 of it. So, as you know, that funding is, we'll have about $500,000 on the table to talk about. We were going to maybe start that conversation at our mid-year update, which is the second meeting in February. So yeah, there's another chunk of that money if we do want to define a use.
There's a requirement for 75% to go towards direct
Public safety,
public
yeah.
safety.
Yep.
And then the remaining, which you're saying is about 500,000.
Yes.
The commission can decide on which community initiatives would be best for the community. Okay.
Yeah, we were gonna open up that conversation, but by all means, if you want to start generating ideas, I'm sure city manager would be appreciated.
I've talked about it a lot,
Yeah,
especially as someone who has worked a lot in Lansing. It's very interesting. It's sort of magic money. Like the road money came from cannabis, and then with this,
Yeah.
it's like, what's the equation?
Right.
So that's going to be interesting down the line, and also interesting that this was not touched at all.
Yep.
And their waste, fraud, and abuse. Cutting, what was the other thing? Oh, and then allocating some, speaking of road funding, that was my second question, allocating how much to Vital Streets?
So we have not received That Vital Streets item, hang on, I gotta go find it. That was not related to the additional funding we expect to receive. This is, we received more gas and weight tax than expected, so we're gonna
okay.
appropriate it. The additional money we expect in, I'm still working with the Department of Treasury of where are we gonna receive this? And Card and Farrick I know has been on top of that as well. So I'll make sure I have an answer for that, or try to get you more of an answer for when that funding is coming in and how much and how it's going to hit our fiscal years. I'll try to lay that out for our mid-year update.
And do we have an estimate of how much we're thinking for that new road funding as well?
When I did preliminary estimates, we were thinking maybe 5 million would hit this year, but annualized it would be about 10, maybe 11 million. But that was off of really early, estimates. So I'm hoping to get something more solid by the time we talk in February.
Yeah, I'm really interested, just to a small cliff note about ideas for road funding. Bringing in, specialists for who, really could look at our streets, take a look at our streets and talk about being more user-friendly, more people-centric, a better use of our space. I can't think of the name. It was like it talks about when it snows like this, how we can see, Mayor Mandami was just talking about it, how you can see the pass-up cars and people actually travel more in the snow. And then it leaves these opportunities for better green space, more, so it would be wonderful to get, I think, someone who really is looking into this to talk about what opportunities for a change we'd have. And I think that would be a smart thing to consider as we look into that additional road funding. So just an idea, and hope we can let the city manager know and my colleagues as well that I think that's a good idea to explore. All right, those are all thank you so much. All my questions.
And my question was on the Public Safety Trust Fund, but we talked about that. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Our last resolution for today is the bid list resolution for January 27, 2026.
Oh, so moved.
Support. And this one, if I recall, we kind of just take out.
Yeah, it's just 6 items today, fairly routine. Renewal of our IT support, the SCADA software, things of that nature. So if you do have any questions, myself or the departments are here to answer them.
I don't have any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries. Next is the Comptroller's warrant report for the period of December 30th, 2025 through January 12th, 2026, in the amount of $30,291,749.26, and small claims fourth quarter 2025 and monthly travel reports. Mr. Comptroller?
Good morning. So we have 3 reports here this morning. The first one, the warrant report, showing that cash payments were released totaling approximately $30.2 million, which includes $5.9 million for our employee payroll expense and just over $61,000 for income tax warrants. In terms of quantity, 204 income tax refunds were issued and 1,285 accounts payable checks and electronic payments were issued. These funds were not issued by the Comptroller's office or any individuals in the Comptroller's office, and not in accordance with the terms of the city charter. The second report we have for you this morning is the quarterly small claims report. This details small claims paid out by the city from the 4th calendar quarter of last year. A total of 12 small claims were issued, totaling $28,771. The third report that I have here this morning is the monthly travel report for the December fiscal year to date period, so about half the year. And that report details travel spend by each city department and is showing we've spent around $969,000, or about 42% of the overall annual budget. And those are the 3 reports that we have this morning.
Thank you. Noted. Received and filed, thank you. Reminder. Next, our last item for today is the Treasurer's Report for the period of January 1st, 2026 through January 13th, 2026. Mr. Treasurer?
Good morning, Commissioners. With our report today, we just want to point out that continuing to firm up our opinion and thoughts on the fact that we do have to have an independent Federal Reserve for the United States. That is definitely something that has to be maintained. If that is not maintained, all bets are off on what's going to happen because obviously the call to push interest rates down below the Fed's target of 2% would cause major disruption. Really, I think what's going to happen is we're going to look at tomorrow's rates as the next FOMC meeting, and they're going to hold it steady. It's over a 90% likelihood that we won't see a rate cut. Various market participants have been surveyed, and they're looking at potentially 2 rate cuts in 2026, and they're saying no rate cuts in 2027. Granted, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to change. We're going to have a new Fed chairman, Fed chair, as Chair Powell is done in May, and the president, you've heard from our president who's been putting forward potential nominees for that role. We're really going to be paying attention to the fact that we are hoping that that person who's going to be appointed in that role or brought forward for approval is going to be someone who is going to continue with the position of being stability and a rock, really because we don't want to see any shocks to the market right now. We really don't want to see any shocks to interest rates. I think there's plenty going on right now with tariffs being levied really as a stick, as opposed to is that the correct path we should take? And they haven't fully been looked at through the economy. Businesses haven't passed on full costs to consumers. That's something that's going to was really something that was pushed forward in the Economic Club meeting that we had yesterday, and listening to one of our presenters who's saying that, hey, as you're a local manufacturer, you can only absorb price increases due to tariffs for so long, because you'll see your margins get squeezed, your profits get squeezed. They can only do it so long. They're going to have to pass on those costs to the consumer. So we'll see what happens in that realm. But I think there's just way too much that's still up in the air right now. We want somebody who's very consistent, stable, that we can look to for sage advice when it comes to our economy and the Fed outlook. Right now, the key economic points we're looking at is inflation is still in the upper 2% range. The Fed's target is to get that to 2%. The labor market is still cooling. Unemployment rate is 4.4%. It ticked up to 4.5% recently in the most recent news since this report was written. But we're keeping our eye on those things. Our focus right now is going to be looking at where we land in terms of our budget. Our budget is going to be signaling to us what bond issues are going to be brought forward, how we're going to look at drawdown schedules and invest those funds, but also trying to get a deeper dive and deeper look into what the city is looking to do with the reserve funds that we have. We currently have $600 million of reserve funds, and we're going to be looking to see if we're going to start spending some of those down. And when do we need them? Because then that sets our portfolio up a little bit differently. We'll have to hold more money short term as opposed to placing it out longer. So that's our take on looking at the next budget cycle as we go through critical meetings on that as to where we are looking to spend our monies. Because if we're going to start spending our monies in the next 2 or 3 years, we're not going to be placing our money out there 7 to 10 years. We're going to be pulling more money in short and riding it, getting ready so that we have the funds there for liquidity to cover what the city needs. With that, our portfolio right now stands at $711 million, which is both reserve and bond funds, and we're earning 3.36%.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Commissioner, any questions for the Treasurer? Hearing none, that report is received and filed, and with that, we are adjourned at 8:48. Thank you. morning. The time is now 9:16, and we are going to go ahead and start our Community Development Committee. Commissioner Purdue is on her way. Commissioner Robbins also had some challenges, so everyone please be safe out there, okay? But we'll go ahead and start with myself and Commissioner Belcheck. So first is a resolution approving a fireworks discharge permit for Field Entertainment, doing business as Disney on Ice, Jurassic World Live, Ringling Bros Circus for indoor special effects at the Van Andel Arena in connection with Disney on Ice Road Trip Adventures, February 5th through the 8th.
So moved.
Support. Hello.
Sounded like quite a mouthful.
I know, but this is important, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is Disney on Ice, so mostly Disney on Ice stuff. So nothing to be too concerned about.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's the only one today. Next is a resolution awarding a contract with Ellis McLean Construction LLC for systematic sidewalk repairs at various locations, 2026-1, in the amount of $1,195,780, with a total amount not to exceed of $1,350,000.
So moved.
Support? Serving?
This is part of our Vital Streets Systematic Sidewalk Repair Program, where we go through the city and we inspect sidewalks and replace all squares that aren't meeting standards. This is a return to our 3-year cycle where we've shifted our bids to do larger contracts in each ward. So this is our second trip back to the 3rd ward with this larger contract.
Great. Thank you so much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 3 is a resolution awarding a contract with Wheeland Corporation, doing business as Wheeland for Eastern Railroad, to and Grand River Trails East in the amount of $3,649,271, with the total amount not to exceed of $5,935,700.
So moved.
Support.
So this is our Grand River Edges Trail. We're very excited about this. So this has been a long time in the making, and we've been able to resolve our property issues. I'm really excited to get this bid and get a good bid and see this project move forward.
Ms. Irving, how long is that open for?
How long is
For the bid process? How long do individuals have? I'm sorry. This is to award the contract. My apologies.
Yes, that's okay.
I heard something else in my head, so.
That's okay.
All right. Well, I guess I don't have a question. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Thank you. Item number 4 is a resolution approving an agreement with MDOT for the Lion Street and Fuller Avenue pedestrian hybrid beacon and authorizing $310,745 for the local share of cost.
So moved.
Support.
So this is an improvement for a crossing on Fuller Avenue near the intersection of Lion. This ties into access to the park. So this is a pedestrian hybrid beacon to increase visibility and increase pedestrian safety as they cross in that area. This was also supported by a HISIP grant, which was sought by Mobile GR to help offset those costs.
Great. And I know there was active engagement on this project as well.
Yeah, they went through community engagement process, yep.
Yep, I've heard from neighbors, and they were appreciative of those efforts, so, all right. Any questions, Commissioner? I'm sorry, I haven't asked you that yet.
No, you're fine.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 5 is a resolution approving an agreement with the City of Wyoming and Steelcase Incorporated in conjunction with Storm Sewer for Eastern Avenue between 44th Street and 40th Street for a not-to-exceed amount of $24,000.
So moved.
Support.
So this was a storm sewer that's in a borderline street, so the street's shared between Grand Rapids and Wyoming. And there was also Steelcase, who was our largest contributor to stormwater. They have a large parcel over there. So it was a collective agreement to figure out ownership, to repair the storm sewer, and define who's going to be responsible in the future to pay for any repairs. And it'll basically be a cost-sharing agreement between Wyoming and the City of Grand Rapids.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 6 is a resolution approving a construction agreement and accepting 4 public utility easements for Highview.
So moved.
Support.
So this is a private development, so the streets are private and the utilities are public, so we receive easements so that we have access to maintain and repair those utilities.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 7 is a resolution accepting a sidewalk and utility easement for 855 Godfrey Avenue Southwest in connection with Oxford from Norwich to Godfrey Reconstruction for $45,265.
So moved.
Support.
So in this area, along Oxford Street, we have a bridge in this area, quite a bit of grade change. So our storm sewer is actually on private property. So we are getting an easement from that property owner to allow that storm sewer to still be there and us to have access. This also supports our Oxford Trail project, where some utility relocation is necessary for the playground.
Okay. I parked on that when we did the groundbreaking, and admittedly, I had not been back there in some time, and the grading is quite steep. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 8 is a resolution authorizing the assessor to spread nuisance charges for certain outstanding accounts receivable for roll number 8802 totaling $478,734.38.
So moved.
Support. Mr. Treasurer?
Good morning, Commissioners. With this item today, our nuisance roll 8802, this kicks off a standard process. And so we've actually given you a calendar of the different steps that take place. This is the start of our process, or we'll notify property owners of these different items. It's kind of one of our last call efforts to bring them forward to pay the bill, appeal the bill. They'll have the right to do that appeal. A lot of the charges are very similar to what we have every single year. We typically are around $450,000 to $500,000 consistently every 6 months. So these are items that were billed out July 1st through December 31st of 2025 that have gone uncollected. This is a design process to collect through the property tax system. And so as you look at a lot of these, some of them are going to be folks that own multiple parcels that are landlords. And they just allow those to just roll through. They'll take care of them when the property tax bill hits. And so we do have an extremely good process. Community development, I marvel at the way that they've taken the time to purposely engage with our residents, place notices, start a 45-day conversation before they even get to a bill. And so this is an outstanding process, but this is where these are lienable charges that we're able to do the final collection work through the property tax system. And more than likely, the $478,000 typically drops to about $350,000 to $400,000 because they'll come forward and pay the bills as they get their notices.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, for highlighting the process and all those communication steps. Commissioner, do you have any questions on this item?
I just would ask that in the process, at the end of all that, what do we end up, if we're left holding that, do the properties go into some sort of receivership or something?
So that's a whole different process. So let's say, for example, it does go to the property tax roll. They then have another full 8 months to pay the city, right, up to that point in time, and eventually it would then transfer to the county. The county then has a 3-year process. So there's plenty of time that's available for that person to come forward. Even if the property sells, we'll collect the funds during closing, because the title companies will ask for those outstanding bills. They'll ask for the property tax bills. And so when a property sells, then we would be made whole.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, I'm going to call the question unless you'd like me to review number 8. I know it's bad out there. You're not the only commissioner who's had some challenges today. So.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I'm good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 9, and 10 is a companion item, but item number 9 is a resolution scheduling a public hearing for February 10th, 2026, to consider establishing an industrial development district for Long Road Distillers at 1750 Elizabeth Avenue Northwest.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Rennero?
Yes, this first item is establishing the district for an industrial facilities abatement, which ultimately would be supporting Long Road in their expansion. So they're leasing space over on Elizabeth, just south of Ann, and this would be basically to add dedicated space of 20,000 square feet to invest almost $680,000 in real property improvements and equipment. And that's really to expand a distillation, I'm not saying that right.
For distilling.
Thank you. Capacity and installation of a canning line for their ready to drink products. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, question on this public hearing, setting the date? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item number 10 is a resolution scheduling a public hearing for February 10th, 2026 to consider an application for an industrial facilities exemption certificate filed for Long Road Distillers for $680,000 project located at 1750 Elizabeth Avenue Northwest.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported? That was just the last item, and so
further
this is
comments?
for the real property investment that you discussed in the first item.
Chair?
Yes.
I would just like to say it's always great when we see our businesses expand. So it's nice to see these things come before us.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Our last item today is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the professional services agreement with Housing Next, contracting through the Greater Grand Rapids Chamber Foundation for housing practice services to increase the authorized contract amount by $35,000 for a total not to exceed of $135,000.
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Behrens?
Yes, thank you. So there was a related item on the fiscal committee agenda today to find the source of funds for the $35,000 with the general fund. So not a lot more detail to provide, just get a lot of support from Housing Next through a variety of initiatives. Their staff helps support the Affordable Housing Fund, board meetings. They're helping with the zoning update now that the community master plan has been adopted. They do help support our private development partners who may be looking particularly for LIHTC funding support, and are supporting us with the pre-reviewed plan set. We've gotten some feedback on the cost of those plans and trying to find ways to simplify that construction. So that is kind of the normal course of business that I sized this contract to cover. And then after the contract was approved for these 2 fiscal years, we also added the ADU task force. So that was a significant lift that we did lean on Housing Next quite heavily to help us get that put into our work plans that otherwise wasn't anticipated. So just need to cover some of that we were not expecting.
Lots of activity. ADU task force, I think I mentioned at a meeting last week, that was from when we kicked it off to getting presented was very fast, and was not something that, again, with shifting roles on commission was not something I think that we thought was going to kind of be in this year. So even that alone, but certainly noting those other value adds. Colleagues, any questions?
Yes, Chair. I just want, if you could just review quickly, because Housing Next has its own, website, its own functionality. This contract is going to the chamber to fund it. So can you just describe how that relationship exists and how is it its own nonprofit? How does the chamber support it? Things like that.
Oh, boy. So Housing Next, we would kind of consider them a consultant, right? So they're set up, I can't speak to the form of entity that they are, but they have asked the Greater Chamber Foundation to provide this contractual function for them because they aren't set up with a lot of back-of-house type accounting functions and those kinds of support things. They're very focused on the think tank part of what they're actually set up to do. So they rely on the Greater Chamber Foundation to provide that sort of back-of-house infrastructure support for them.
So it's sort of a fiduciary relationship.
I would say yes.
And
that is
I know
correct.
that, the work that the chamber has done to help Housing Next and the 100 by 100 and other things, there is dollars coming from the fund, the Chamber Foundation, to support that. So it sounds like this is a fiduciary relationship to funnel the money to the right place.
Yes, fair point for transparency also. So both Housing Next and the Greater Grand Rapids Chamber Foundation independently do their own things in the housing realm that are not happening through this contract, not under our direction. And we try to work closely with Housing Next to ensure that that is clear to folks when there are different conversations happening in the community. But we're always happy to clarify if that creates confusion as well.
Thank you.
I need to call the question though, Mr. Clerk, right? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. And with that, we are adjourned at 9:30. Thank you.
2 items up for discussion today. Both of them are briefings, but before we do that, afterwards, it's our intent to move into, aimed at closed session for discussion of pending litigation, I believe, correct? No? Property, right, property discussion. So I'd entertain a motion to move in closed session following to the, okay, clerk, if you call the roll.
Commissioner Kilgore?
Present.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Asasi?
Yes.
Commissioner Purdue?
Yes.
Commissioner Belcheck?
Yes.
Mayor LaGrand?
Yes, and I think Commissioner Kilgore, you didn't mean to say you're abstaining, right? You meant, you meant yes?
He said
It's
present.
early. I'm like, I'm here. Yes, yes.
You're not doing a Justin Amash on us.
No.
Okay, city manager, if you want to take us away.
Thank you, Mayor, and Commissioners for being here, and glad everybody was able to safely make it. Today, we have a very light cow agenda with 2 briefings. I'll tee up the first one. And the second one will be a follow-up from the discussion we had at our last city commission meeting. But with so much emphasis on international affairs, we often get asked to take policy actions on things that are beyond our ability to influence or decide. But one of the things we can do internationally is develop relationships directly, not directly with the state governments in other countries, but with other cities through our sister cities programs. And we have been doing that subnational diplomacy. Luke Canfield has been the lead from our office in coordinating with our sister city partners. You have improved the funding support for sister cities in last year's budget, and today we wanted to provide an update.
All right, thank you, City Manager. Good morning, Commission. We get so much done in Grand Rapids through partnerships, and Sister Cities really is a story of 2 important types of partnership between the city and others. Of course, between us and the other cities, and you'll hear more about them in a moment. And the City Commission, your predecessors have authorized each of those relationships over time and then helped to sustain them, as City Manager said, through funding support. So there's the important partnership with the cities, but then we also have a model of partnering with a nonprofit organization, Grand Rapids Sister Cities International. It's a multi-decade partnership. It's been led by very capable people over time. And the 3 current members of the executive board of that organization are here today. So Catherine Baker is the president, Emily Smith is the vice president, and Kelly Jo Peltier is the treasurer. And so we're happy to have them join us today. And we will have some exciting news that is part of the upcoming briefing. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Catherine Baker to walk through the slides, and then we'll answer any questions you may have.
Good morning, my friends. Thank you so much for having us. We are thrilled to be here to represent Grand Rapids Sister Cities International. We have a number of slides this morning. We will be flying through them. That's roughly 10 slides with actual content, but many additional slides for resources for anyone tuning in as well. So what we'll be covering today or this morning is just a little bit about Grand Rapids Sister City International, GRSCI as we call it, mostly the why this is important, where and who, what's next for our strategic growth, and then how you can support. And I'll also save time to answer any questions. So just looking at our mission statement, you might be familiar. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, all volunteer-led, whose mission is to build and sustain these relationships between the city of Grand Rapids and all of our respective sister cities. Why is this important, especially right now? We are actually a local activation of a larger movement called Sister Cities International, which is based out of Washington, D.C. It was established by President Dwight Eisenhower after World War II. And even all of you are so important. What this initiative really sought to do was to place peacekeeping and international diplomacy back into the hands of our community and of our people, to remind us that you don't have to be an elected official or an appointed governor. You can just be a regular person, as some of us represent, we're regular people. Where do we already have sister cities? You hopefully know this. I won't quiz you. We have relationships already in Japan, 40 years strong, Perugia, Italy, Bielsko-Biała in Poland, the Ga district in Ghana, and, Zapopan in Mexico, and Gangnam-gu in South Korea. These relationships represent the diversity and uniqueness of our community. We also represent a board of directors, and with our board of directors, these directors represent committees. So even the names that you see, the volunteers, there stands behind them about 10 to 15 individuals from your districts or your sectors who also represent our communities and own these relationships. We want to put some faces to these names and the programs that we're a part of so you can see that there's such richness in our community. So what's next for Grand Rapids Sister Cities International? We are expanding. With your incredible support, we've actually been able to make strong gains in our international partnerships with relationships we've already identified. You know that we are already friendship cities with Dnipro, Ukraine. This formed or established at a really unique time, right when the war broke out, and we received several asylees. We also have a new relationship with our friendliest neighbor, Canada, and we have started the Inquiry City there. A little bit about these cities. You probably know all these data points, but one of the really fun things about these relationships, our predecessing mayor, Mayor Rosalind Bliss, established this as a friendship city after years of support, again, with the war in Ukraine. We have the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, who is from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and this is such a joy to be represented on that level. You might also ask, why Vaughan, Canada? Canada is a vast place, and why Vaughan specifically? Established as an inquiry city by, this is a mouthful, Canadian Consulate Representative, Agent General Earl Provost. His name is Earl Provost, but all of those things are titles. Vaughan is the fastest growing municipality in Ontario, and it also serves as a similar economic hub, much like we experience in West Michigan, with Grand Rapids sort of being that leader. We also are similar in manufacturing and transit, in affordable housing and responding to housing crises. And we have started this relationship already in 2023. And so we are so grateful that many of you have already supported with your letters, with your willingness to join in conversations. And as you can see, we have already had a really wonderful time building these exchanges, relationships, and programs. That's what our mission of GRCI is all about. We've had 3 trips back and forth with Canada. It's a little harder right now, as you might understand, to get to Ukraine, but we have welcomed several Ukrainians into our community, and so we are grateful for your support there too. How can you support? As our commissioners, as our city leaders, you can authorize and affirm these existing partnerships and support and continue to support our international communities. This is an especially appropriate time when we are being iced out, and we are also being iced out. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is a really sensitive conversation, but it's also a wonderful opportunity to express your confidence in our communities here in Grand Rapids. A lot of you ask this question, so I'm going to anticipate it. What do timelines look like when we establish these sister city or friendship city or inquiry city partnerships? So if you look at these as a step line, the first step always begins with community interest. We do take leads, we do take references, but we really rely on community support. So these are cities and communities that have been backed by our Japanese community members, our Italian community members, our Polish community members, our Ghanaian. Wonderful, wonderful people and residents here in Grand Rapids who are committed to making these possible. We ask them then to organize amongst themselves. It's really fun. And they they figure out what it is could be their business case. And what a business case refers to is simply a reality in which it invites us to sustain these relationships beyond one person. So one person might have the idea, but we need to make sure that Grand Rapids, this is a mutual benefit for our community as a whole. So that's what we ask. We are now in the next steps. And so we are sort of this precursor. You will be having additional conversations. You'll be welcoming different members of our Ukrainian and Canadian communities who will present their, quote, business case to you as to why we should move this forward. And we're asking you for your support and for your ratification of these relationships. Then the final steps, you'll see a little infinity sign. That's because, again, the relationship goes straight back to the committees, straight back to our community members to make sure that these relationships are sustained through programs, whether it's learning languages, culinary, arts, economic, businesses, growth, and they sustain it throughout. So that brings me to our point. Vote yes on citizen diplomacy, not today, but every day here forward. We don't have anything for you to vote on today, but we want your to thank you for your support for GRSCI. I personally am so grateful for all the events that you've attended, the programs you've been a part of, for hosting. Hosting is such a big deal. We want, when we invite people to our community, we want them to see the best, and you are the best. So thank you so much for your support. And now we will take any questions that you might have.
Mayor, before we have questions, let me again thank Sister Cities Partnership and Catherine for her leadership. I also want to highlight one of the things we try to do is forge a closer relationship between our Sister City program and this county-wide welcoming initiative with Kent County, and there is mutual support now from that office. And the other thing I want to thank Sister Cities for doing is, as we celebrate America's 250th, there is an international inclusive component of that, and the Declaration of Independence, I believe, is being translated as many languages that are known in our county. So the only time I've ever read the Declaration is in English. The only language I've ever read it is in English, so that will be very interesting, and hopefully there will be readings all throughout the county of that in various languages. So I really appreciate their effort.
Thanks. Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Perdue.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Brad.
Could you talk a little bit more about the business case? I've never heard of that aspect of Sister Cities before today.
Yes. So we call it a business case, but what it refers to, Commissioner Perdue, is the sense of if someone has the idea or they are from a particular community in the world. So you might, I'm from South Korea, right? And so I might have this idea to have a Korean sister city, but is it sustainable beyond one person? Is it sustainable beyond one family? Is it sustainable in the business community, in the educational community, in our economic community? All of the different communities that we represent. And so we call it a business case just because that's the language that SCI uses, but it can refer just to a simple sense of sustainability and maintenance of the relationship beyond just a primary season into the further years. So how are we growing together? The other reality, because this is a great conversation, is that some sister cities, it will feel like we're the little sister and we're gaining education from our bigger sister cities. Gangnam-gu specifically is 11 million people. We are very lucky to be in partnership and conversation with them. And also we have little sisters, and so Omihachiman is a little more rural than Gangnam-gu would be, obviously. And so how can we help support them as well? And so that business case looked like we actually have sent brewers, being Beer City USA, we've actually sent brewers to the community of Omihachiman to help them understand those industries, best practices, and so it's been a really fun way to build exchanges around this business case, just identifying the ways that we can grow, our community relationships can grow, and also our global relationships can grow.
Thank you. And thanks to the board for all your work and your volunteerism on this.
Thank you. We all have full-time jobs, and so we are so grateful that you have made time for us.
Yeah, so I have said before that I certainly, it's great, and you go to any other city and this is a global thing. You go to the city hall in Glasgow and you can see all the cities that Glasgow is a sister city with. They're right down in the lobby, just like they are here. And it is, I think, good and important to remember that we're part of a global group, that humanity is in fact global and not simply limited. Humanity doesn't stop at 28th Street. But I do hope that in the future we can consider what we might call similar cities very seriously. And so I think that the founding documents of the sister cities was sort of built on a notion that, if you do cultural exchanges and person-to-person diplomacy, that's got value, and of course it does. But I think it's also true that cities that are similar to Grand Rapids are cities that we are likely to learn a lot more from potentially and click with a little better. It's hard to transpose lessons from downtown Manhattan necessarily to Grand Rapids. It's a lot easier to transpose lessons from cities that are about our size and have similar challenges. I mean, if Miami has a wonderful bike lane infrastructure, hard to see how that relates when there's, an extra 8 inches of snow I had to shovel this morning. So if I'm looking at bike lanes, I want to look at a city that's got real winters. If I'm looking at housing challenges, I'd like to be in relationship with a city that's had real challenges, figuring out how to help people who are unhoused. So I hope that in the future we can start thinking where are cities that not only can we build person-to-person relationships with, and I'm not sure that putting the business thing to one side, I think that we're in the business of building a great city, and learning from cities that are doing the kinds of things that we struggle with, I think, is real opportunity. So I would love in the future for us to consider, for example, a city that's really worked through cycling things. And I know that we have significant ethnic populations in this town that are German, that are Polish, that are Dutch, and I think that cultural resonance can also maybe lead us to find some cities that are doing interesting things that we would like to consider, replicate, maybe learn from, but that also have some cultural and ethnic ties into a lot of the traditions and groups that we have in the city. So looking for a city, for example, that really is doing good work on bicycle infrastructure and multimodal transportation would be exciting. So just throwing that out there for future ideas. Commissioner Belcheck.
So on behalf of Sister Cities, does that mean you're volunteering to start coordinating that? I'm just kidding.
At a citizen level.
As a citizen. I just wanted to say thank you for this. I love getting the updates from Sister Cities and, encourage people to visit you at your website, go to your events. I do think it's important that this is all volunteer led, and it is something that everyone can participate in at some level. And just the idea that we're connected through social media and all the things that have changed since the original founding of Sister Cities International, I think it's important. And the fact that we're living in maybe some of the most developmental times for what the new world will look like if we want to embrace humanity together. So thank you for all your work, and look forward to continuing to have not only to support, but also to see what improvements we can be making.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And our next briefing.
Yes, we're going to continue the conversation on community engagement. Last week, we had a preview of the website that had taken place, and we actually had intended to have this as part of it, but we were mindful of the time And additional consideration we wanted to get to this, I know there's been a lot of discussion around this dais about engagement in a variety of levels, whether it's from infrastructure to public safety to even how we make people aware of what's happening at City Hall. And so I'm very pleased that the staff has been highly responsive to the feedback that we've gotten from the commission and the public. And we've highlighted a few of those strategies, enhancements, and I'm glad that we're here today to hear from our staff. And today it would be Ms. Riley Mukovich that will be leading the presentation.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Andrea Riley Mukovitz, and I'm your Community Engagement Manager. So today I'm delighted to introduce the Community Engagement Framework. This framework has been almost 3 years in the making. So my goal for today is to provide a high-level overview of the framework and discuss the next steps of implementation, and then I'll hand it over to David and Kate, who will provide a couple of updates on our engagement efforts. So first, why create a community engagement framework? Where there has been ample engagement, this is the city's first official community engagement framework. It was created to provide standardization and consistency. Where this framework offers shared practices and values, it does so through an iterative and relational approach. It approaches engagement as collaboration. It is process-focused and people-centered. It identifies shared values and practices. It was created to communicate the why of public participation to community, to clearly explain what we as city staff can and cannot do, the role of community in public participation, and the impact community input can have on a project. As an organization, we need to communicate that we have many approaches to public participation that depend on a variety of factors and manage those expectations to the public. The framework provides a toolkit on how to communicate these options, practice consensus building, and how to communicate empathetically when there is disagreement. Where staff have already begun to test and implement the framework, there's an expectation that departments will implement the framework into their work in a way that reflects their initiatives, their capacity, and services. So in front of you today is the process map that I'll talk about later. But to give you a sense of what's in the entire framework, our process map is a visual tool for both staff and the public. It's designed to explain the process to community and to track progress for the work group. The guidebook offers high-level descriptions of the values and practices, and the manual, which is a whopping 118 pages, because you know, it's me, provides significant detail and options on how to implement an engagement effort. So I want to begin by first talking about the process of designing and testing the framework. So before developing the framework, it was necessary to understand both staff and community perceptions and experiences of community engagement and request input and guidance on both content and implementation. So under Inform and Involve, you see here a list of community partners under different kinds of groupings here. And so for this section, I asked for input and feedback based on their past experiences of what successful and meaningful engagement felt like. I presented various versions of this framework to these groups for feedback and to check in to see if the values and practices reflected their goals of civic engagement and public participation. Within the Involve and Test part of this slide, since this framework serves all city staff, it needs to be flexible enough to implement, whether it's public safety, planned infrastructure, transformative projects, or planning. It also needs to recognize that departments have policies and laws that direct their interactions with the public. So to understand this, I relied on staff for their technical and content expertise at all levels. I developed a group called the Community Engagement Collective, which is comprised of engagement specialists across the city who come together once a month for professional development. Their expertise has guided the framework, and tested it on efforts such as Fair Housing, Neighborhood Summit, Recycling Education, our Car Share program, MLK Lodge, and Emergency Preparedness, to name a few. Lastly, our values leads provided input and tested it for internal work groups to ensure that the framework echoes what occurs in our trainings and process improvement efforts. So within Scan the Field, many municipalities have community engagement frameworks. So one component of designing and testing this framework was to research how these organizations practice community engagement. So I presented at these conferences here to receive feedback from fellow practitioners and studied frameworks to identify common themes. Additionally, the framework's values and practices draw from academic research, professional studies, and community organizing models. This framework reflects both the locality of Grand Rapids and professional discussions related to community engagement. So the framework is comprised of 4 segments, and so I'm going to begin with these guided questions to highlight the broader purpose of each segment. So within proactive relationships, the guided question here is whose expertise, experience, and perspectives will contribute to this project. The goal here is to ensure that we have the appropriate audience to interact with and to understand who will be most impacted by the effort. Within clear engagement expectations, our question is how do we clearly and consistently communicate the impact of community feedback will have on the project and the process. And our goal here is to identify not only what kind of participation is needed, but how that participation will support the goal and outcome of the effort. Within thoughtful engagement experience, our question is, what is the intended purpose and outcome? And our goal here is to design a meaningful public participation effort that meets the purpose and the outcome. And within shared learning, the main question is, how can we apply our learning to improve future projects? Here, the goal is to communicate what was learned during public participation process, how it impacts decision-making, and what can be learned to develop more meaningful engagement for the future. So here's the process map. You should have gotten a very big thing of it as well. It's humongous, but I like that size. And so this is the visual tool that I was explaining earlier, and it depicts engagement as a life cycle. For the city of Grand Rapids, we understand engagement as iterative and intentionally cyclical. And so I'm going to go through each parts of this segment now. So within proactive relationships, the focus here is partly project management by organizing a work group. It also focuses on scanning the field to understand the ongoing conversations around the topic to best identify the audience for public participation. To practice proactive relationships is to understand context. Within clear engagement expectations, the work group begins to identify the purpose and the goal of engagement. Within the work group, there needs to be shared agreement and understanding. The shared vision leads to how they will communicate with the public and identify how the public will find meaningfulness in participation and what kinds of feedback may be needed to support any decision making. To practice clear engagement expectations is to have shared language, purpose, and manage expectations. Within thoughtful engagement design, this part focuses on implementation. Now that the work group knows its purpose of public participation and what it's hoping to receive from community, it's time to develop a strategy to design the event and implement. By this point, the impacted audience and the staff should know their roles and the impact of the engagement will have on decision making. To practice thoughtful engagement design is to curate a meaningful experience for a specific audience to participate in a way that is reflective of the intended purpose and outcome. So within shared learning, this segment here, staff are evaluating the input received, determining how it will impact decision-making, and preparing communications both internally and externally. Here, we are seeking to understand if we got the information necessary from the public to guide decision-making and how we will communicate decision-making. In this part, shared learning is also an opportunity to request informal and formal feedback from community partners and work group members on how to collaborate for the future. To practice shared learning is to be transparent about what information was received, how it will be used, and what was learned in the process. To summarize, the City of Grand Rapids engagement framework is an iterative process. What this process map illustrates is that the city will approach engagement by centering people, relationships, and understanding the nuanced process of collaboration. We will utilize shared practices. It will occur as a toolkit and not as a rinse and repeat. Because of this, we often emphasize to staff that the life cycle of engagement is much more interconnected than what is shown visually. We encourage staff to be flexible, agile, and community responsive. So I'm going to talk about a couple tools in the framework as well. So one of the resources in the framework is the threshold of engagement, and this is within the clear engagement expectations. The threshold is truly a tool to communicate collaboration and contributions. It's designed to provide shared learning among staff and community and communicate the intended outcome of the engagement. So within Inform, this is the lower part of the threshold because the goal is to either educate or to communicate. The city may or may not request feedback, and if we do, it may have low impact on the decision-making process. So examples of past and ongoing efforts are our Emerging Developers Lunch and Learn, Commission Night Out, or the Property Tax Seminar. Examples of feedback are a post-meeting survey that's requesting feedback on the event and its quality, or requesting lived experiences so city staff can continue tailoring our services. Where there is technical expertise and policy that direct decision-making, such as planned infrastructure initiatives, community feedback may inform or guide the city and focus on lived experience. Within Involve, the goal here is to request input or feedback that will have moderate impact on decision-making. Examples can include our Deer Management effort, where we did a public meeting and circulated a digital survey, our fire department strategic planning, where they held multiple meetings with different groups and then requested feedback on their current plan as well as their future one. It could also be our upcoming zoning ordinance or our food scrap efforts, where feedback will focus on a very specific topic for decision making. Within Co-Create, we co-create because the city has a project, time, and resources that can center shared decision-making and collaboration. Co-creation may occur on both the effort and the process. Often the timeline is flexible and the scope allows for broad feedback to be narrowed and refined. Participation will have a high impact on decision-making. Examples can include our Community Master Plan, Neighborhood Summit, or the CAP. It's important to emphasize that there is not a morality to this threshold. One is not a gold medalist in engagement if they are consistently doing co-creation. Instead, selecting the level of impact should be done with intention. It should reflect the purpose and the goal of engagement while balancing the needs and interests of the community. So how do we do this? So this tool here is designed to guide staff and work groups to determine which threshold to select. So under audience and purpose, our guided questions are, who is the intended audience and what is the purpose of public participation? Within capacity and resources, our guided questions are, does the impacted audience have interest and availability? Does staff have the capacity and resources? Within timeline, is the timeline flexible? And can it be adjusted based off of what was learned during public participation? Within knowledge, what knowledge is needed by the group to make a decision? How will that information impact the process or the effort? And are there technical requirements that need to be prioritized? And lastly, policy. Are there policies that direct the impact of feedback on decision-making? So for example, we cannot legally require developers to co-create with the public, and that needs to be considered. So our next steps. So as I've shared before, the city has been testing and learning various aspects of the framework for over a year. I actually just learned today that our first training is completely filled within 48 hours, so that's very exciting. But we have more work to do. So Engage GR is our public participation platform that's supported through public input, and this is our tool to communicate with the public as well as digitally engage, including survey circulation. So our staff have been using this tool. The communications team is currently working with departments to develop a departmental specific plan on using the platform. And since we are in the rollout and implementation stage, multiple trainings are being designed that cover the high-level aspects of the framework as well as application. There will also be a dedicated training for leadership to support staff through the engagement process map. Lastly, let's look towards the future. So by next year, we can expect that the city will more consistently utilize the language and practices of the framework, specifically the threshold of engagement. And also there will be intentionality on closing the loop on engagement efforts. So thank you for listening to my portion, and I'm going to turn it over to David.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm just going to give you a very brief update on a couple of initiatives that you're familiar with. But before I do that, I just want to recognize the amount of work that Andrea's put into this. Like she said, she wrote essentially an entire book by hand. So it's been a labor of love, and she's done an outstanding job. So that being said, let's talk about Commission Night Out. So just to give a brief little bit of history, pre-pandemic, the engagement portion of Commission Night Out was conducted very much in a predominantly open house style, and then it was paused through the COVID-19 pandemic. Post-pandemic, coming out of that, we additionally resumed our previous practice of an open house style, but it evolved to include more targeted and specific engagement activities, in part because we have Andrea on staff now, and she was able to help advise departments on how to do that. And it's been very, very successful. And in fact, it's been so successful that it has now outgrown our current CNO. The timeframes in which we have and the desire on the part of staff to really deeply engage on specific topics, it isn't a match any longer. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to shift to a service delivery model. So departments that have front-facing operations that regularly provide service to our residents will still continue to participate in a little bit, maybe the time frame may truncate a little bit, while still leaving us the option to do targeted, more informed style engagements. And as Kate will talk about, hopefully briefly in a moment, we're going to test this model in March with our next upcoming one by doing a construction kickoff. Some of you might recall last year we did a big construction engagement at the beginning. This will not be quite that. This will be more to inform the community of what's been going on, and what to expect for the construction season. And that'll give you an idea or a flavor of where we're going with CNO. We still, though, will be shifting and conducting larger engagements independently and doing those out in the community. So it's not that we're going to be doing less engagement. In fact, we'll probably be doing more, and they will be more substantive and deeper in scope and nature. And then just very quickly, while I have your attention, the Commission Enhanced Pilot, just to remind you, we did extend the pilot through the end of the FY. Ward 1 actually will go out tomorrow. So we have all the materials from our partners at Seaforth PR, and we'll be uploading that tomorrow. Ward 2 will go in February, Ward 3 in March, and then repeat again until the end of the fiscal year. That currently consists of a Ward newsletter, Ward vlogs. Those have been updated. We've a little bit, and we've also taken some input from both you all and the community on content. And so you should see something a little bit different, but still very familiar over the next few months. And in the future discussion portion, we're going to be collecting feedback again, both from you and the community, and then through the budget development process, we'll have to determine the future of the program, its evolution and refinement. So that's all I have. So I will now hand it over to Mrs. Behrens.
All right, so in the context of this engagement framework, we thought it would be good just to reference to the ongoing work we've had for a while now about right-of-way community engagement improvements, just so that the Commission and the public had comfort that these things have been working in parallel. So while the framework hadn't been published, we had been getting the advice and support of Andrea Riley-Muckovitz and Jennifer Van Horsen in the project team all along. So using some of the principles that Dr. Riley-Muckovitz just went over with you, using some of the language so that we are very much kind of in the same stream with what we are trying to do organizationally with community engagement. And really a lot of the same underpinnings that caused us to start this process improvement are what you've just heard about. It's just a different time. People get information in a different way. People have different expectations about how information comes to them. It's a much more of information comes to me, not that I seek information in certain locations. And I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that we are going to 100% solve that issue with the improvements that we are making, because we do have to use certain channels. There will always be some, I think, some friction in that process of transferring information from the city to the public and back and forth. But we saw some of those same things that caused us to launch these improvements. So just a quick update, and certainly we could come back at a different time to go into more detail. But last year we really focused on how we shared information in the inform terminology for those corridors that were going to be under construction. So last year was really focusing on the construction period information. How are we getting information to impacted stakeholders? Where was going to be sort of one-stop shop for the most current information about any particular project? How could we provide a higher level of communication connections for those people that were directly on the corridor impacted, so they each received a direct line that they could call if something wasn't playing out the way we had expected it to, so that we could solve problems quicker in the process. We also piloted some different ways to communicate with the traveling public. So it's relatively simple to say, hey, a project is coming, let's do mailed notice, let's talk to the neighborhood association. It's a little bit harder to get the people who are maybe just going to drive through that corridor once or twice. So we tried some different things with electronic signage and putting signage out earlier so people could plan. So that's really where we focused last year. We are going to continue to use those tools that worked well moving forward, and this year kind of focusing on how to operationalize those ideas so that we use those tools repeatedly in a way that's efficient for us and takes advantage of the improvements that landed well last year. And as Mr. Green noted, for Commission Night Out, in March, we'll be using that as one of the ways that we try to communicate to a broad group of people what to expect this coming construction season, so folks can plan ahead and plan around those things. For the design period engagement, that's really where we're kind of starting that process now in more earnest. So we have a couple of projects that are in design now, and what we have seen as common themes, all the same things we just talked about, layer onto that sort of the time between when we start engaging on design and when we actually hit construction, and how are we keeping those anticipated changes fresh in people's minds, because it is just a municipal reality that we design something and it can take years to get to the place where it's in our capital stack fully funded and we're able to get the shovels out there. And so we need to find ways to help people anticipate that. And we need to, I think one big thing we've heard a lot about is we come to that design process with a lot of information. So especially when we're doing a big street kind of rebuild, we come with information about crashes and safety. We come with information about traffic volumes and speeds on that corridor. We come with all of the design templates and vision that is created through area-specific plans, through our Vital Streets guidebook, and all of those things. What we've heard a lot from the commercial corridors is that there's a lot of questions about the information we have about parking. And I think changing concerns about parking and customer convenience in today's sort of retail market in particular. And so one of the things that we're doing from an engagement improvement perspective is what can we gather similar to all of those other priorities around what we know about parking. So making sure we're coming with similar levels of understanding about what the current experience is, so that we're starting kind of at the same level of information as the stakeholders that we're engaging with. And so that's something that we're working on now in terms of our engagement improvements in the design period. So expect to be able to update the commission more as we move forward on these improvements in particular. Can't forecast everything we're going to come up with in this process improvement, but know that we're still very much focused on this and within the language and terminology and expectations of the engagement framework that was just shared with you. Then just a quick note on the fiscal committee agenda today. There was a request for 3 additional staff people that would in part help create some capacity to continue to meet these public expectations around engagement. So 1 additional staff person in the planning department that would be dedicated to supporting our Vital Streets and capital improvement projects. Really, as we are finding these improvements, a big piece of that is making the connection with people, cutting through the noise of all of the ways people get information and making that face-to-face connection and being a resource where we can pick up the phone and answer questions or provide support. And we really just need more man hours to be able to provide that level of service. So that was one ask. And then 2 Economic Development Department positions were requested. One that would be focusing on providing additional support for our corridor improvement authorities. That's been something that has been in line with the commissioner's focus areas for quite some time, and again would create additional capacity to help support those corridors through these major construction projects and help with that goal of keeping the changes that might be coming with future capital projects above the radar for those corridor improvement authorities, so that as they do projects and think about ways to invest in the corridor, those things are going to stay well aligned, and maybe some additional support for marketing and other things that can happen during construction, so folks can be prepared and have support with us walking alongside them in that sort of economic development component of the impacts of construction. And then the second position really creates capacity actually in our tax incentive program for the most part, but allows us to have a little bit more capacity for some cross training and backfilling when needed. So again, to be able to continually provide enough support and contact for businesses that may be impacted by some of these projects. So just wanted to touch on that briefly. That was on the fiscal committee agenda today.
Great. Colleagues,
That's not how we.
questions?
Wrong computer.
Thank you. Thanks for the overview, all three of you. Congrats on writing another book, Dr. Andrea. I was going to say, I don't know what number you're at, but
3.
say it loud. So I know this was something, again, this has been an evolution. We talked about it when we talked about the website, really kind of looking at communications overall. One of the questions that I had, and I appreciate you saying there's no sort of like the gold medal, it's, all engagement is important. And I also really appreciate, because I think maybe in the past engagement meant, well, if I tell you what I want, that's what's going to happen, right? And so it's resetting what is that relationship and what are the expectations. So I really appreciate this and had some good examples of times where we've invested. I was also thinking, because what I didn't hear on here was our not our standing committees, but our boards and commissions that we have throughout the organization. Obviously we met with appointments today, and just thinking about what does that engagement look like and how can we put that. Also have opportunities with our liaisons, many who might be involved with other projects that are noted. But I was reflecting on in 2006, I sat on the first city board. I sat on the Civilian Appeals Board, and I really didn't know what to expect at that time. And so I also think just differing bodies have different charges. So wanted to highlight that because that's a really important way that people engage with the city. And then my other note was, really, when we look, I'm just thinking back about the master planning process, and we just had a whole presentation by some of the consultants that the planning department is working. So obviously needing different expertise, so we would bring people in. Would then that contracted, what's the expectation? Do those external facilitators then, is part of it, they would understand what this framework is and then embed that into the specialized work that they do?
Yeah, so I think it's going to depend on the department, but actually I'm working with the zoning ordinance team and those external consultants. And so, like I said, it depends, but we do have some past practices where those consultants are using the framework. I'm working with them. The car share program is another example. And I think it's really, my philosophy is that if they're interested, let's onboard them. If they think that's possible, let's do it. But I like to leave that up into the department and the project lead to make that decision.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that. And then my second part of the question was probably more for Ms. Behrens about just some of the right-of-way pieces. So thank you. Appreciate this kind of circle back. I think one of the things that we heard kind of consistently, or even we hear when we get things resolved with 311, is that it might be a subcontractor that created a certain scenario that was not meeting the level of standard that we would have, whether it's something being left or something not being cleaned up or things like that. So I just wanted to highlight that again, because, what is that, you've got that person you have the contract with, but what does that look like in the relationship? Appreciate the comments, Ms. Behrens and a number of other city staffers met with a group, which was maybe like a pre-community engagement for one of our neighborhoods in the 2nd Ward a few weeks ago. And so, some of it involved developers and sort of, what people are doing, things by right. And so I understand, certainly understand you can't force things, but how can we continue to inform sort of those that are either developing in the city or wanting to come to the city about, what is the level of standard that we want to have? So more of that carrot perspective and just kind of showing what's possible. So I want to highlight that. And then lastly, mostly because, I think it's been more KDL, but thinking about the Grand Rapids Public Library, especially during times like this where people, maybe a library provides refuge, or, all the parents out there, sorry you've been stuck with your kids for this many days. I don't have kids. But it's been a challenging environment, right? And so I'm just wondering what that relationship with the library is. You have so many people who are coming in from our city into our libraries. And is there a way to maybe do some of that informing with the library? What does that relationship look like? We obviously have done it, pretty explicitly for elections and things like that. But just wanted to understand that, particularly I think because they're in different neighborhoods and construction, but certainly any other communication opportunities. Thanks.
Yeah, so just with respect to all of the people that do work in the right-of-way, so our right-of-way engagement process, we really intentionally are focusing on in terms of what tools to use on our projects. Part of what we're focusing on, what we're doing this year to translate what we learned during construction period last year, is to translate some of that, what needs to go into our specs, what needs to go into our requirements for contractors and subcontractors. Once we wrestle that down, we will be talking to the departments that issue permits to others to do work in the right-of-way to see what might be appropriate for us to require in permits versus share as a best practice. But that will be sort of a phase 2 of implementation. So certainly we'll see that through, but it will be a little bit further down the line in terms of what we expect. Similarly, with respect to planning and private development and just their level of engagement with the community as they think about what their private design projects will be. The planning department, as you know, and we talked about with the 2nd Ward group the other day, does a lot to encourage developers to reach out early and to set up meetings. But certainly, again, as we roll this forward and we learn more, we may be able to distill things down into more of a best practices thing to make it more clear what we think our public expects to help developers be successful. So that'll be more that we do down the line. With respect to the library, I think David had some responses, but to the extent that they are impacted by construction projects, that will be another body of work that, again, we do quite a bit of work up front for those institutional those institutions that are in the project zone, schools, for example. We do a lot internally behind the scenes to make sure we understand how they might be impacted. Externally, how to push that out to those customers are parts of the improvements that we've made and will continue to make. But David.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that the libraries have always been a great partner to us, and vice versa. We have a great working relationship, and so we've even had instances in the past where I think the NCS a few years ago, they were willing to provide a QR code at the desk so that people that didn't have access to a computer that wanted to fill out the digital survey could come in. And so that's something we would do as part of that audience and that planning of the engagement, is determine if that's an audience and a location or a method in which the department might want to use. But yeah, that's certainly something we've done in the past. Yep.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Can you bring up slide 8, go back to slide 8? I wanted to place emphasis on the point where Ms. Behrens landed on staffing resources. The majority of what we do as a local government is somewhere between that inform and involve area. And there are a lot of things that we do informing the public that has to be done in order for the city to run. The more we move to the co-create, and you can see some of the examples around it, those are pretty long-term strategic things, such as the community master plan, and even some of the things that are involved, like the deer management program. We almost got to the point where we were co-creating with the neighborhoods. That becomes very, very staff intensive, and those efforts that require us to co-create need to be well planned in advance, because staff will need to either reprioritize existing work, or we will have to resource it either with external contractors or with additional staff. And so whenever there are emerging issues, and the immediate response is, oh, let's create a task force. Task force typically fall into the co-create area, which reprioritizes work of the staff. And I appreciate Commissioner Asasi's point. If we already have an existing body in our governance structure, a committee, a commission that's already existing, instead of recreating another body that will oversee the work, it is better, more efficient, better governance to work within that already existing structure, to ask that task force, whether it's a subset of Mobile GR Commission, subset of Public Safety Committee, et cetera, to work on specific projects within the existing framework of that task force. At times that doesn't work. We understand that. But the more we can do that, the better we can be efficient as in governance and, at least from the management perspective, prioritize staff time.
So if I can, I think that, and I think those are good points, City Manager, but one of the things that I think your framework, and this is good, and I think it's a good framework for the topic it addresses, but I think that it's worth us also considering as we move forward, and I think this is something I really hope we can engage on in the coming years, and that is moving into more of an experimental culture. And so we can make decisions and inform people about them. We can make sure that people really understand all of the work that goes into things. We can talk about things that take years, and we can talk about all the various considerations. But it's also true that sometimes you can do things fast and try them, and that also involves engagement, but I think quite a different kind of engagement. But I hope that going forward, I mean, one of the things, for example, that New York City did very well on street design in the last 10 years was they just tried things, and they would modify something, and it would take a little paint and a couple orange barriers, and they could then see if something worked or not. And I think that historically, that's not been something we've spent a lot of time doing. It's just experimenting, and I think often our traditional city perspective has been, let's build things that last for 30 years, rather than let's see if this works. And so I think that's a space that we can probably grow into productively, but I think that's also really an engagement question. So I don't know if you want to speak to how things would differ on experimental.
Let me start with that, because I do think having a culture of innovation is good, and having experts in our departments that are aware of best practices, getting feedback from the community about different practices, that's great. But from a policy perspective, when we experiment, we have to be intentional. It has to be very thoughtfully done and prioritized. And so it's not the idea of the week that we're exploring, and for big issues on experimentation, for me, it requires the prioritization of work. So I'm certainly not afraid of challenging the staff to think differently, to try things, to try and fail, and have it, kind of rapid. Matter of fact, we have a whole innovation effort, but there is still some intentionality that we need to have around experimentation, especially for an organization this big. We're not a small startup. So with that, then I'll let Ms. Riley Muckovich follow up.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so I work very closely with our continuous improvement and innovation lead. And in fact, that is something that she deeply embeds in the culture of this organization. So we do experiment. We like to think of it as a test and try. So even yesterday, I was talking with the Neighborhood Summit Steering Committee, and we were talking about the shared learning segment and how to do some data collection and analysis, and taking the innovation human-centered design approach. What we did was we categorized it into 3 buckets. What do we want to test and play with now? What do we want to save for later? And what do we want to try with our group, so that way we can see how it feels with the work group first before we go out. And so this is one of those ways to balance intentionality, policy, and then also thinking about the large-scale impact that could happen when we do something that staff may not feel wholly comfortable with. So we do create and curate those spaces, but we do so in a very intentional and specific way.
Commissioner Belcheck and then Commissioner Purdue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I don't think we can overstate how important this conversation is today. So I do want to say thank you. This has been something that I've been hearing about a lot in the last year. You know, what's coming, it's coming. So I'm really glad to see it here. But also it's something I think that there's high expectations in the community. And it's something that we hear as electeds. It's something I've heard as a regular community person. And so I think it's important for us to really emphasize the language we can share around when are we in inform, when are we in involving, and when are we in co-creating. And so the questions I have right now are, when we're talking to community, how do we make that clear? Because you talked a lot about the impact and decision making. There's a lot of expectation in the community that everything they say will be part of our decision. And that's not always practical, obviously, or manageable. So I guess how early in the design process can we get people in beyond informed, but to feel like they're co-creating? How does the feedback, when it doesn't get incorporated into a project or gets rejected in some way, get communicated back? And what do we do to manage expectations or engagement when it goes completely wrong or sideways, which we've had some recent experiences with at the developer level? So again, not even a city level, where developers are going out there being brave, trying to get early information out, not even engagement, and we're getting some conflict going. And all of that, I guess that's 3 layers of questions, but, you know, to highlight just briefly, sometimes we still need things not in digital. And I think mentioning the library and how to go there when you don't have access, but we do have people who don't use computers or prefer paper, and so remembering how do we cut through the clutter sometimes mean face-to-face relationships. So keeping that forefront, and then I'll just let you kind of step in, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the first thing I want to begin with is just the broader idea of how to manage expectations and how to communicate the why, right? And so I would say it's project specific about when it happens. But for me, if we have, like many of us do, pre-existing and ongoing relationships with community, the assumption is that we should be always talking with them in one way or another. Within the framework, there is a tool around proactive relationships and also thinking about the role of guidance and consulting, and thinking about how to do that as a part of the informal, formal check-in. So one thing that I try to talk to staff about is to be very clear and accessible with their language, try not to get too technical, and try to be pithy, which I'm not, right? And so I think that's one part of it with the Inform, is to create accessible openings for community to understand why we're doing the project and why we want to interact with them. And then the second part is what their role is. And I think we need to take the time to educate them and say, like, I would encourage staff to bring this process map with them. And I would encourage, before we get to the public participation feedback part, to do some consensus building, community agreement, announcements, explaining why we're here, checking in to make sure that we all understand that first, and giving that time and space. It might not happen at the public meeting. It might happen within a work group or asking community connectors to do that. So that's why I'm saying project specific. There's a lot of pathways, right? The other part is that we have to manage expectations, and so that means having staff have brave and difficult conversations and equipping them with that by saying, we really do want you to stay at this meeting, and we really do think that your presence is important. This is the feedback we're looking for. Are you willing to give us that feedback? So one of the things that we do, and I think you've come to a couple of the events that I've run because I'm also partly an analog lady, is I'm a big fan of worksheets. And I think that's one of those ways to really direct to meaningful and specific feedback. If you ask a specific question, you get the information you're looking for. And then I think it shows community that we're being very thoughtful and intentional about what we're looking for, and it focuses them. There will be times, and there are times, when people will want to co-create with us, right? And I feel like we have to just have that conversation. And also, it's also their right to advocate or disagree or argue against us. One of the things I say is collaboration is community engagement. And one tenet of that is that disagreement is normal, and it's going to happen, right? And so we have to practice that belief as we work with each other, right? Work group, partners, whatever. So one of the things I want to draw your attention to on the process map is number 6, where it says remove and prevent barriers to participation, and that's under community engagement, experience, and design. So that part of it is where we start thinking about audience, right? And that's where we start thinking about that experiential component of who's going to be in the room, what information do we want. And you're right, we have to have a multimodal approach to how we get feedback and how we approach people in an accessible and interactive way. I think I addressed all your questions.
I think you did. And I would just like to flag that I believe that with our community engagement process that we had recently over our new park, that we do need to look back at our policy and how on park naming and to incorporate that into a policy rewrite with our new engagement framework and what was done last year. So flagging that for our city manager and team.
Commissioner Perdue left. Any other comments, colleagues? Thank you so much. And that moves us into closed session in room 601. Thank you.